Are we live? Is this thing on? You bet your booty we're live. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Big Draft Energy. We have a very, very special guest today. And this special guest is known as the number one best ball player in the world. He's hailing from Tampa Bay, Florida. This man's resume is huge, and so is his pockets. He was the winner of the first ever Best Ball Mania. He won a whopping $200,000. He's the only person to make all three Best Ball Mania finals. He placed fourth in 2021 in the DraftKings main Best Ball tournament, making a crazy $100,000. I might ask him for a loan after this, actually. In 2021, he invented the first ever NFT fantasy football game and league. He continues to innovate on new fantasy football games, as well as being the co-founder of Own the Moment. And he's also a very well-respected and very well-known best ball expert on Establish the Run on YouTube. So make sure you guys go hit that subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Herzig. What's up, buddy?
Disco, how's it going? You are too kind. Good
I try.
To see you.
I
Good
try. Welcome
ready to draft.
Yeah, we're ready to draft. We're queued up. We're booted up. We're in here. This looks great. You're drafting at the 105, and I'm drafting at the 110. We got Disco Ball Nation up in here. We got all of our good buddies here. So I got a couple icebreaker questions for you, buddy. I do this with all of our special guests. So I got to ask you, in terms of steak, are you a ribeye guy or a filet mignon guy?
I do, like, I cook myself my own steaks, and I can just do a filet so much better. It's just the safer play. If I go out to a nice restaurant, then I need some bone.
Okay. Now, next question. Rare, medium rare, how do you like it done?
Medium rare.
Okay. That's good. And what kind of ice cream is your favorite ice cream?
I'm a cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream, fair enough. How do you feel about mint chocolate?
I don't mind it. Sometimes you can even get like a little mint chocolate, like cookies and cream combo. Not bad. Like, hey, frozen Thin Mints, pretty much like the best cookie out there.
Yeah. I'm not going to agree with you there.
Not a mint chocolate. Is that a trap?
No, it's not a trap. I just want to know, like, if I could break bread with you and like we can eat together and have a nice meal together, just skip the freaking dessert. So we're good to go. So welcome to our channel. We really are grateful to have you join us and draft with us here. You already started with Cooper Kupp at the 105. Let's go. So you're not waiting for Cooper to drop a little bit?
I think there's a strong tier after that fifth spot. And after that, I actually have Eckler ahead of Kelsey. But after that 5, like, I'm not too concerned about the injury. I still think the upside for Cooper Kupp, like, no one after that 5th spot has kind of the possibility of being the wide receiver 1 overall, I think, with a decent probability. So I'm happy to grab Cooper Kupp kind of. And really, anywhere in that top 5, I'll take whoever falls to me.
Fair enough. All right. I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb here. Now, let me ask you a question. All right. You won $200,000 in the first ever Best Ball Mania. Am I correct?
That's correct. I feel like when I won it, it was basically, I refer to myself as like the Doyle Brunson, where he would win the World Series of Poker and there were like him and 20 friends. And now the World Series of Poker has like 10,000 people. I feel like the BBM, when I won, like, that's how much people were in like 2 days worth of BBM drafts nowadays. It was so crazy how much change there's been.
Fair enough. Now, let me ask you a question. That's a life-changing amount of money. What's the first thing you purchased with that crazy amount of money?
I probably later that night started drafting more playoff best ball drafts on Underdog.
Yeah. It sounds about right. You are hooked on this stuff. Now, another question. A lot of people really like maxing out these tournaments. Did you max out that first ever Best Ball Mania?
I did. Yep. Yeah, I've been, I mean, early on was definitely a very high volume grinder. And I think for the main tournaments, it makes sense. Like, I don't know, like, if you have the time and, you know, the bankroll, I think it makes sense to kind of just go all at it. There's just enough strategy aspects that, like, okay, I want to have that well-balanced portfolio. Also, if you decide from the beginning, I'm going to go 50, I'm going to go 100, I think that's fine as well. But I do like starting to be like, I know how much I'm going to enter for this tournament, so I know how I can spread it out from a time wise, from an exposure, and all of that.
And do you anticipate that you're going to max out this drafters? You're already at 105.
I'm trying. It's become a little easier with with the liquidity, like they're filling a little faster, which helps. And I don't really like doing slow drafts. Let's see, Cooper Cup. Do we want to go Henry or Olave? Let's just go with we'll go a little running back there.
Okay.
So I'd say, yeah, I mean, ideally, because also we're expecting substantial overlay on this. And hey, shout out drafters. Like if you're not drafting, you're not taking advantage of the opportunities out there right now.
Amen. So speaking of the overlay, how much overlay are you expecting at the end of the day here on drafters, and what kind of opportunity are you expecting in terms of the overlay?
Yeah, like if you look at the current like actual rate, it looks like it's going to be somewhere around like 50%. I think it dramatically increases as we get closer, as people just realize how much there is. But it's still like, it's not like a DFS where I can just, hey, there's overlay, let me go enter 150. Like, hey, there's overlay, you have to grind those out. So unless you're going to pop in a whole bunch of slows or something, like it's still difficult. So my guess is we end up see this gets to like maybe 65, 70%.
Okay, that would be pretty sweet. Now, let's open it up to the chat. We got a lot of people here who are very excited to have you here. Best Ball Jonesy, this was 3 hours ago. He said, only 3 hours left to wait. You are a freaking legend. Jonesy's the one who connected us. So shout out to Best Ball Jonesy. If you guys are not following my man on the Twitterverse, what the hell are you doing with your life? All right.
Best Ball Jonesy had to wait 3 hours to only have me disappoint with not disliking or hating mint chocolate chip ice cream, apparently.
He said mint chocolate chip is a sensitive subject here. That's funny. So here's a question from Snowman089. Question for the guest. Lots of people say DFS has basically been figured out. Do you think the same thing will happen with best ball? And what do you think will be the most important aspect?
So I think the reason why DFS has been mostly figured out, and I give quotes there, is because you have two aspects where you have the strategy and then you have like the macro strategy aspects and then the micro, which is probably player takes, player exposure. On a weekly basis, all right, let's grab Mark Andrews. Okay. On a weekly basis for DFS, the strategy aspects, like things ebb and flow, but like 80, 90% of the stuff is already there. And then it's how do you adapt to the micro? And now projections are just fairly efficient across the industry that no matter what site you use, you're not going to be able to get a major edge on projections. So like, sure, you can take some player takes, but overall, like when you combine all the focus and energy and then the, just content that's out there on a weekly basis, combined with the macro, most people having that 80, 90% knowledge, like there's not that much room to go. With best ball and DFS, like I think we're getting close to that, like, hey, 80% of it is figured out to the best of our knowledge is what I'll say. There could be things that we are missing that maybe we're all just being biased by the amount of data we have, because if you look at like what we're using from a data sample, it's predominantly just underdog data from 3 tournaments, and that's 3 seasons of information. You're not even getting DraftKings data. You're minimally getting other sites. But most importantly, you're only getting that 3-year sample. So what I would say is like, I think that it's pretty well figured out based off the data that we have available right now. That can continue to evolve. But from a from a solve standpoint, there's still lots of ways that you can kind of find edge, get unique, just enjoy the drafting aspects, all of that. When you have things like weekly winners that just came out, I love that because I'm someone who I love games. I love strategy aspects. I love trying to figure out what the puzzle is. And the weekly winners, there's no back data about these contests that can actually, provide us with what are the optimal strategies. Even if you try to use like best ball mania data, that's wildly inaccurate because that's not how people are drafting for this structure. So like this feels like the Wild West for weekly winners. Drafters, where it's just a different structure, it's more that kind of upside. So I think it's very important that we continue to see innovation in the best ball space. So while one tournament, Best Ball Mania, there's a lot of data that's 3 years, whatever, like that has a level of confidence around it that like we know what's right and what's wrong. If we continue to see innovation in different forms of best ball and different forms of contests, different forms of even how the game is played, I think that's extremely important for the industry.
Great response. Jesus Christ. Back to your weekly winners. So I personally don't have access to it because I'm from Ontario, hence why we're drafting here on Drafters, and we love Drafters. So we're
company
okay.
As well.
Yeah, we're okay drafting where we're at, and it is available in Ontario and everywhere else except for what? Montana, Nevada, Hawaii. Yeah. If I were to do the weekly winners, I would probably approach it the same way I would approach my DFS lineups. It just seems that there's way too much connection in terms of finding good matchups and trying to just stack best players on the best teams in that weekly winners. But I'm already assuming that a lot of people, are playing that tournament simply to just win one week as opposed to winning the overall every week, right? What's your approach there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that there are different strategies people are employing, and one of those might be let me focus primarily on 1 week, or really it's like if you're going for matchups or you're going for like, hey, this is the real week. I think it's honestly pretty difficult to do that. I don't think you're getting unique if enough people are actually doing it. And I think like in general, it's kind of a I don't know, like a red herring of kind of approach to it. For me, it's far more of how do you build teams that give you time over time chances to finish in that top 0.1% when certain things go right. And so, for example, if you think like, hey, my first 3 picks are running backs, you've devoted a ton of capital to running back. That is not a problem, but there's no like you're not playing for the floor, the median projections, and all the data that we've done around best ball mania and advance rates and stuff. Those take into account that even in bad weeks for your elite guys, you need to at least get some level of median projection value to make sure you can advance in those down weeks. In this, whether you finish with a 12 or a 15-point game, it's pretty much the same thing as a 0. It's not going to cash you for that player. So here, it's more of play for the upside. When things go right in certain areas, think about how you can construct the rest of your team to kind of support those nut outcomes.
Fair. All right. So we got another question here from the chat from Quasi. Quasi won first and second place in one of the drafters, I want to say preseason tournaments. I forgot what it's called. But shout out to Quasi. He says, guest question, does AI threaten the integrity of best ball tournaments and making sure we have a fair playing field? Good question.
That is a good question. And I think it can be baked down. Just trying to figure out what I want to do real quick on the clock. Let's grab Justin Fields. I like that upside. Okay.
You and me both.
So from an AI standpoint, well, yeah, if we that question talked about integrity. When I think of integrity, my largest concern is not AI. My largest concern is more from a collusion standpoint, and whether or not like you have certain groups, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9 people joining the same draft, allowing for super drafts, all of that. In theory, AI should actually help us maintain integrity because we can use things like AI to actually identify whether or not these are highly likely to be collusive behaviors. And so you can probably train enough data to show like, hey, these are good actors, and then identify maybe they've seen here are some bad actors. And hopefully the AI can be trained enough to help these companies identify when there is collusion. So from that degree, I think there's actually some positives from an AI. Now, I think what the risk is, and I wouldn't really call it integrity, but more of just, I don't know, beating or hurting the game is AI used to actually create bots? And are these bots able to draft strategically, smart draft, actually be able to use on apps? And then what are the company's policy against them? Because right now, it is very clear that if you want to use augmentation, not artificial intelligence, but augmented, which is usually these heads up displays, the ones where while you're drafting, you can add information. Maybe it shows you in real time what your exposures are, what your matchups are, week 15, 16, 17, etc. Those have been determined for the most part that they are allowed. Whether that decision's been made because the companies can't prevent them, whether it's because they don't actually mind them, I'm not sure. but we know they're allowed. The next step is, okay, what about bots that are actually being used to make the picks on your behalf? And so Brian Hooper, Brick75, he created it in broad daylight, not trying to skirt rules or anything, was just doing it in open, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here it is. Built a bot that would actually make picks for him. And its current form was probably equivalent to like a meh drafter. That's fantastic from a first iteration. That would be vastly improve over time. The question is should that be allowed by sites? And sites need to kind of come to two decisions there. One is this good for the game? I think most would agree it's not good for the game. The second is, can they catch it and how do they catch it? Because for the Brian Hooper situation, he was doing that without, as we mentioned, like trying to hide it or anything like that. He was doing it publicly. So of course they're able to say, oh, hey, we see you. You're not able to do that. What if a bad actor, and I don't even know if it's called a bad actor because I don't know what the rules officially are or would be if they've determined them, but like in the future, if someone's using it behind the scenes, can they actually catch that? And can that be declared against the rules? Because it's kind of worthless to declare something against the rules if they can't actually monitor or prevent it, because at the end of the day, only good actors are harmed while the bad actors can continue to do that. So it's not so much like AI as integrity, but I think that bots is a substantial danger to the game because, and let's think about what is the impact here. In a 12-person draft, one person botting, it probably doesn't have a major impact. It's not that much different than a human doing it. But if that person is then going to join, I don't know, the 3-mans, the 6-mans, the 12-man lobbies, and they're just going to continue to just pump in, and then what? Now you have 7 people doing it, 8 people doing it. Like at the end of the day, it just creates a poor experience for us as users when you're going against these kind of computer programs.
Noted. Now, I know you're in the crypto space. I know you're into that whole crypto stuff. I don't think the algorithm is completely perfect with these crypto bots, this crypto AI, where they predict the ups and downs, the crashes, the buys, the dips. Would you say that this could potentially be perfected here in best ball using, crypto market as a comparison?
When you say this perfected, do you mean like can we get to it?
Yeah, best ball in general, just best ball fantasy football tournaments or best ball tournaments in general. Do you think AI can perfect it?
I don't think there's anything from a perfection because it still involves so much from a projections what's on the field. But I think the thing, what the question really becomes is, can this get to a place that it can draft 95% of my ability? Because, and I'm making up 95%, but there's some number that humans would be willing to give up to gain back their time in exchange for maybe decreasing their expected value a little bit. For example, let's use drafters. Right now, we're talking about there's going to be most likely overlay and such because, hey, I'm on 102 drafts or whatever. That's 102 hours of my life. If I'm thinking of this from a business decision, I mean, how much money do I need to turn for 150 hours to be worth it? Like, even if I value my time at $20 an hour, we're talking $3,000 in profit right there. And that's extremely difficult from a best ball standpoint. So, like, obviously, we're not doing this for grinding the profit. It's more because we enjoy it and we're hoping for that big finish. But, like, if that's the case, and I think that a program can draft just as well as I can, maybe to the 95%, it probably makes more sense for me to maybe, hey, I'll draft some when I want to enjoy it. But for the most part, and there's all these other sites, let me just let the bot do it. And then I'll go spend more time and maintain my marriage.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, we got another question. I like the way you think, by the way. It's really cool to pick your brain and hear what you're saying. So Best Ball Jonesy says, what is your biggest advice for underdog versus drafters tournament? Great question, Jonesy.
Yeah. The ADP. Across sites, DraftKings, drafters, underdog in general, the ADPs don't actually differ that much. And when they do differ, what we're seeing is that they're differing more so just because of like archetypes and, underdog wide receivers like to go earlier and such. Like, it's honestly not even accounting for the scoring differences and like tournament structure. So for drafters, I think you can specifically identify players who are over or undervalued on their ADP simply from the aspect of this isn't a traditional tournament where there's playoffs at the end. And so the most extreme examples is someone like Jameson Williams, who has that 6-game suspension. When we're looking at a player to draft, we will see. Let's grab Rashad Bateman. When we are looking at ADP, so yeah, Jameson Williams missing the first 6 months. When we think about how that has an impact in a tournament like Underdog, we accept that there's a chance that it's going to hurt advance rate. That makes sense. But also you have the opportunity to get a unique player into the playoffs because it's a lower advance rate and a player that is going to be clicking and playing his best because he's on the field during the playoffs. So like it makes sense why people are willing to kind of take a risk on him a little earlier in Underdog. On drafters, his score in week 7 is the same importance as week 17, which is the same importance as week 1. So in that format, like he should not be going nearly as high as he does on other sites on here. But and I don't actually know now, but I remember when we looked at it earlier on, Jameson Williams 121. He's dropped a bit, but I think he's like 108 or whatever on other sites. So like it used to actually be Jameson was higher. And now like that's around, I think it should honestly still be more. And so that's just an example, but like rookies are another one, injuries that are early on, but like go through the list and just like have in your head like an identification of here are the players who the rankings I'm using are probably not the rankings I'm using, the ADP I'm looking at on here. It's definitely off what it should be for this structure.
Fair. So we got another question from B. Kurt. B. Kurt says, Justin, amongst friends, what is the last thought that goes through your head before opening the ETR Best Ball Discord?
It's probably my thought, and I'm looking at someone else, other Discord. Like we've got 2 different Discords that I'm active in and managing from the OTM side of things. So if I'm about to open up the ETR Best Ball Discord, that means that I probably just left another one. And I spend a lot more time on Twitter than Discord. When I think through like where my time allocation is, I try to like kind of poke my head into the ETR Discord for like 2 reasons. One is it's just good to, have a presence there, but also like there's some really sharp people there and there's some good conversations that happen. So I do like kind of just like staying on top of things. We are going to grab like Samaje Perine, another example where his ADP across sites are pretty much the exact same. You may think that like Javonte Williams is going to be ready week 1. He's going to play this preseason game. I get it. But like my thought is that Javonte Williams is still going to be a slow ramp up. And if anything, Javonte Williams is going to be more valuable at the end of it and Samaje will be less. So like, but I'd rather than draft Samaje the same ADP on this site where those first weeks count just as much versus like the others through that in. Because but yeah, B. Kurt Ford definitely recognize that name from some Discord conversations.
He was the first place winner in the DraftKings, I want to say play action last year. He won first place there.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's B. Kurt. He was supposed to queue up with us and get in the lobby, but the moment we called it in the Discord, it just filled. So shout out to Disco Ball Nation for doing that. Now I have a question. Yes. All right. Because I just saw him get drafted by Willie, Big Willie 86, Anthony Richardson. At first, his draft profile had me absolutely excited. And then after listening to conflicting reports about him being, the backup to Gardner Minshew, which has been pretty much trumped now, and him not being ready and him being the next Trey Lance, I know you're an Anthony Richardson truther. Can you sell me on Anthony Richardson so I can start investing again?
Sure thing. Let's start off with, where did you hear those reports about backup and about him being a bad passer and stuff? Where'd those come from?
Bad fantasy football podcasts.
That's fair. I mean, but like analysts, you could have gone with reporters, you could have gone with columnists, like whatever it was. The answer was not going to be the Colts team. And so that was the early days where I kind of took my, hey, he's highly likely to be the starter, because all the reports from when they drafted him was accepting that he's a project, but there's a high level of importance to him starting early on and getting on the job training. So for me, the large risk early on is, was he going to play and is he going to get the trust of the coaches that he's not going to get, pulled because he's not good later on. I think that we can now, and especially after the past 2 days with them announcing, I think it was yesterday, this morning, I don't know, time flies, that he's going to be the starter. So now he has week 1. I think, barring an injury, he will not be taken off the field throughout the season because they already, like, life is all about expectations. And for them, their expectations are already very well managed. They understand that he is a project, but it's important to get that real game time feel and training. And so in this, I think, like, okay, he's starting. They're going to keep him in throughout. So now the risk of him leaving is minimal. Okay, we've got that already accounted for. Now, what are we going to expect on the field? His profile is literally Derrick Henry, but as a quarterback. I mean, his, what is it, 4'2", 40, 240 pounds, 234 pounds or something. His agility scores, like everything was off the charts. So if we now have this quarterback that has the ability to kind of, we can project probably somewhere between 60 plus yards a game. I think it's highly, maybe 6 is a lot. I think we'll probably be projecting him around like 50 to 60 yards per game to start the season, and that could be higher. 1,000 rushing yard season is very much in the possibility. All he really has to be to actually be a great quarterback is just like a below average QB. And so what's nice about this is that floor is actually giving you a solid floor, knowing that he's not going to be, I mean, once we believe that he's going to be playing every game, barring an injury, we now know that we have that 6-point plus floor outcome just from that rushing. Now, can we reach that upside? That's where I'm at least willing to entertain that range of outcomes. And with the way drafts are going right now and QBs going so early, especially the elite ones, it's just, I think he's the kind of guy that, like, at that level where he's being drafted, you can't get that upside anywhere else.
Yeah, he has all the potential to be a league winner. And we got a perfect segue question going to one of his backfield mates. Litten Like a Kitten says, I'm terrified of drafting and keeping Jonathan Taylor, especially now that AR5 is a starter. Do I keep him in my keeper league first round, and do I draft him in my other leagues? What's your take on Jonathan Taylor and this whole ordeal?
Yeah. If you've got someone that's trying to buy him right now, I mean, like, sure, go for it. My guess is that no one really is comfortable kind of trying to buy him right now from a trade standpoint. I think everyone at the most would just be at the least would just be like in kind of wait and see mode now that he's returning, but like he might still be a little injured and so forth. For me personally, and the way that I kind of like think of dynasty running backs, are not where I'm trying to invest my capital. And so I'm often trying to kind of sell them 1 or 2 years before their window closes, unless it's a team that I'm like, hey, this is the year. For my take on Jonathan Taylor for this year, before the injury and the holdout aspects, I was down on him. 1, the offensive line is not nearly as good as what it's been in the past. And 2, we have Anthony Richardson. What are we thinking about Anthony Richardson? Yes, there's a risk for Anthony Richardson that the offense is overall not good, that they're going to play a slower pace for a quarterback. But also, Anthony Richardson didn't throw to his running backs in college. If you look and see, like, I mean, it makes sense because when he was in trouble, he wouldn't dump off. He goes and runs himself. That's probably a more effective use. He's probably better than any running back he's played with. And so now we've got Jonathan Taylor behind a weaker offensive line on a team that's not going to score as much, with a quarterback that's going to steal some of his touchdowns and not going to throw the ball to him often. I've been mostly out on him this year. I've only just started drafting him when there was that week or two where you could get him at like that 20, early to mid third.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been getting him a lot at like the 36th and 37th pick. That's the only way I will get him, simply for exposure purposes. And you get to build some really all-star lineups there with him. We got another question from the two-time Quasi. He says, guest question. Every year, people try to predict the best roster build type, zero RB, etc. Last year's Drafters Millie winner had Hertz and Zach Wilson and actually took zeros at the position. Have you tried the 1 QB build? Shout out to the folks at Spike Week who are all over that, including Mr. B. Kurt.
My top drafters team last year, I'm going to see if I can pull it up, at least for me, so I don't want to misremember, but it was, Let's see. I'd go to my team's history. I finished 73rd, and my team was Trey Lance and Joe Burrow.
Okay.
So I kind of had a 1 QB team there. And I mean, it sounded kind of like the Jalen Hurts, like to some degree as well. I don't think I want to do a 1 QB team. I mean, I don't know the data on like the elite aspects, but I know from like more traditional underdog best ball mania stuff, like it just makes more sense, especially when you have 20 rounds to at least grab that second one. But like, I can't knock it.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it makes sense, but I've been like, B. Kurtz told me about it over a month ago. I've been hesitant to try it. And, every time I come close to completing it, there's a Mac Jones or a Desmond Ritter in the last round. I'm like, I can't pass up on a starting quarterback, so I'm going to pick them up. So, speaking of not only Anthony Richardson, but also getting a late round quarterback.
I'll throw back to your previous question real quick because I mean, we can just discuss this, but I'm curious. I mean, so that team with 0 from Trey Lance had 2,558 points, which how many points do we think another quarterback would have helped me with Burrow instead of Trey Lance? Because Trey Lance got me, I think, 0 points. So like, I don't know, another adequate QB could have gotten me 50 points from 2558 to 26. I don't know, maybe 100.
Well, I think the logic behind wanting to get that second QB, like common sense would say, you're trying to just pivot for the bye week and only pivot for the bye week. But once again, I understand it. I get it. I think it's a very unique strategy. I just personally can't get there. I can't see that. And Trey Lance, he wasn't falling relatively late in these drafters tournaments last year either. What round did you pick him up in?
Let me make this pick and I'll take a look.
Go for it.
This was an interesting one. I was about to grab Marvin Mims because I love Marvin Mims, but like for drafters format, Van Jefferson just makes a lot more sense. Okay, Joe Burrow. Am I able to see when I drafted him? I mean, Trey Lance. View draft. All right, here we go. I was picked 2. I grabbed Trey Lance round 6, Joe Burrow round 7.
Really?
And so if you would have added 100 points to my lineup, which I mentioned I was like 25-58, 100 points would have put me in 7th place. 150 points, I think, might have won it.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. And like, so that's why, it ended up being a 1 QB team. But I feel like if that could have been I don't know, a competent, just any other quarterback or something, gosh, that team would have made noise.
Well, since you're passing on Mims, I will take him gladly. I am a Mims truther, and the Tim Patrick news only boosts Mims. And I know everybody's talking about Callaway in the last round, but I don't think Sean Payton trades up in the draft to take a Marvin Mims with the expectation not to utilize him and involve him in the offense whatsoever. So I like Mims, especially where he's at. We got another question from Jonesy. He says, do you have a certain exposure percentage on players that you stay under?
Yeah, so in general, I try to stay under around 25%. What happens when I reach a player that has more than 25% is I kind of do 2 things. I start off by, taking a look and asking myself, why am I actually so high on this player? And so I'll do my own kind of just digging into it, making sure like, okay, this is really a player I want to be high on. A result of that, one of 2 things are going to happen. Either I'm going to realize, and so I'll talk to other people. I'll kind of like, for me, I'll go to my ETR Slack channel and I'll ask them and I'll be like, hey, like, am I missing something here? Talk to other smart people and kind of get that feeling. And usually what happens is one of 2 things. Either I'm like, I was missing something. I had a blind spot. I'm a little biased. Let me course correct and draft a little less of him. Or I'm like, no, I'm seeing something other people aren't. I still really like him. I want to stay on this path. But then what I'll do is I'll be like, but let me see if I can start taking him around later. because a lot of times if I'm at 25%, I'm probably actually taking him a little too early and I'm giving up value that I could have got him later. So what then happens is my 25% will go down a little, but the now times that I'm getting him are at better ADP value, times that maybe previously I would have missed out. I mean, I would have overspent on. So that's how I usually try to manage my portfolio throughout.
That is going to change my, like, you're very influential. Pretty much everything you're saying I'm absorbing. So that advice is something that I will factor in, because Jelani Woods I haven't drafted in almost a month, and I have, I want to say, 21% now. At one point I had him at 28%, but he's going practically free in the last round and relatively undrafted. I think he's a nice little late round pick, and I think he could be a best ball winner in general. So I might start getting more Jelani Woods, especially now that he's falling. What's your take on Jelani Woods? You like him?
He's been hurt. And so while and like, that's not to say he's a bad pick or anything, but when we have a lot of other 18th, 19th round good values where they're starting to spike up, Jake Ferguson, Musgrave, Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry, like those were all here together. Maybe Jelani was like tiny bit below or something, but like these guys are healthy. These guys are running with the ones. These guys are catching passes. These guys are looking better in preseason. And Jelani just kind of stays here because he hasn't been healthy. I think he's supposed to be healthy for week 1, but we're just not getting that news. So I will
it's a hamstring Jelani. He's dealing with, right?
What was that?
It's a hamstring he's dealing with right now.
That sounds right. I think it's a hamstring. I'm back up. But to that point, like when I draft Anthony Richardson, Jelani's a guy that I like to target. I'm not really taking too much of him without Anthony Richardson. But then again, I'm drafting a good amount of Anthony Richardson.
Noted. All right, Mike W., Dirty Mike and the boys. He's here for the soup kitchen. He says, can you elaborate on Van Jefferson being a better pick than Mims in drafters? Good question, Mike.
Okay, so let's go first off with the premise that ADP is efficient. Okay, why is ADP efficient? Because you have smart people drafting. Where there's inefficiencies, it's going to get course corrected. Unless there's players that you know something that everyone else doesn't, which is very possible, and you could take those takes and you should really hammer them. But in general, ADP is fairly efficient. I think it's lagging and it's slow to correct, but in general, it's efficient. From that point, if you look at the various sites, Marvin Mims' ADP is pretty similar across all sites. So if we then accept that, like, okay, it's efficient for overall tournaments and stuff, and usually the other sites are kind of controlling the ADP a little more than drafters, just because there's more stuff going on and more focus. That means that just by that efficiency, Marvin Mims, a player who is better optimized for the playoffs, for a tournament where you want a rookie or someone who's going to be playing his best at the end of the season, that's where he should be going. That's where his value is. And so that's for the tournament structure. In this, we had changed the structure. And so now we're saying, okay, he's drafted appropriately on the other sites where he's most importantly going to be peaking at the end of the season. In a tournament where the early weeks are just as valuable as the later, he then becomes actually overdrafted because we're focusing, we're accounting for in the other one, getting that value in the later rounds. In this, because there's no playoffs, every round is just as valuable as the others. I'm really looking for, okay, how can I optimize for all of the weeks rather than just one? Rather than just like the later parts. And so when I'm looking at two ADPs that are comparative, Van Jefferson and Marvin Mims, I'm more likely to take a Van Jefferson on this site where we know starting the year he's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets. We don't even know what's going on behind him with Puka and Tutu and such. So like, give me that early high projection and just knowledge, confidence level, and let the rest of it kind of play out. And the last part is I didn't have a second QB. Russell Wilson's already off the board. Stafford was going to be available later. So I grabbed Van Jefferson, Stafford back to back. Noted.
Okay. Now there's a discussion going on in the chat right now about Jonesy. Behave. Brad Hayes says, Jonesy, why are you drafting a handcuff running back? Which brings me to my next question. I know you're a truther in handcuffing your own running backs, but you said you like it a little bit more on UD than you do on drafters. Why is that?
Yeah, so in the tournament structure where you need to beat out in your group of weeks 15, 16, 17 to, there's value to getting a unique player with a highly projected point total for week 17. That's where all the money is. That's where you really want to get unique. That's where you really want to stand out. And so if you draft two running backs in the same team, there's various levels of whether it's one has an injury in week 15, 16, and then you get a unique player in 17. It's in the regular season, one player really drives you forward, has a high advance rate, and then his counterpart actually produces well in the playoffs. Like those are ways that you can get a low owned, what gives you high leverage and high projections player in that week 17, which is where all the money is and what's most important. From a full season standpoint, yes, there are arguments that, hey, if you want to go with, actually, it's three-man backfields that I think are kind of best for drafters. If you want to draft both Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, you are making a bet that Devin Achane is not actually going to be good. They're not going to play much. He maybe gets hurt. And now both of those, because they're so late, become strong values and do well. But if you're trying to go with an argument for Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams, that's probably the middle one. If you want to go more extreme, we'll go Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Those two, it could work for the tournament structure where in week 16, Gibbs is a huge week, and week 17, it's David Montgomery. But if you draft both those in drafters, it's just really difficult for you to hit your top 0.1% outcome of winning this, drafters or finishing top 3, top 5 when you're investing in a decent amount in two people from the same backfield. Because the best actual scenario for a Samaje Perine or Javonte Williams is one of those goes down and the other one just absolutely excels. And in that best case scenario, you've now lost a roster spot.
Well, that's going to change my entire approach and my entire theory on wanting to get those double stacks in the running back positions, the RB1, RB, or the RBA, RBB kind of backfields. Did you just auto?
Almost. Got Ty Chandler in
there. Good pick. Good pick. How do you feel about Kene Nwangu?
I mean, he was drafted around before Ty Chandler. So, from a draft capital standpoint, you got to keep that in mind. In the most recent depth chart, he was actually higher than Ty Chandler. So, that's noteworthy. But from an actual player profile and kind of prospect standpoint, I think Ty Chandler has a lot more burst, is a great a great pass blocker. And we saw it in last game's preseason. Yes, Kene was actually hurt, so Chandler got his chance to shine. But he looked fantastic. He turned 3-yard rushes into 7-yard plays. He turned negative yardage catches into 3 or 4 yards. He picked up some strong blocks. I believe that, and if you listen to what they've been saying from the team, from the coaching standpoint, they liked him last year. He had the ankle injury early. He looked great in preseason. He had the ankle injury to start the season and never truly fully recovered. And they didn't need him to because they had Dalvin and Madison. But the fact that they were willing to let Dalvin walk and then have not really been in the market for another running back, other than in the past couple days, they're kicking the tires on the Kareem Hunt situation. That tells me their plan from the beginning has been this is Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler is going to be good enough to either A, spell him and just, actually play some kind of complementary role, or be a decent handcuff that they don't need to bring in that external party.
Noted. Before I ask you my next question, I am doing a giveaway today, and I was supposed to mention this way earlier. So let's say this. When Jelani Wood gets drafted, you guys spam hashtag Justin in the chat to enter the giveaway. After Jelani Woods gets drafted, spam hashtag Justin in the chat, and we'll enter you in the randomizer, right? Sorry about that.
I love your confidence that Jelani is going to get drafted.
Well, if he doesn't get drafted by anybody else, I'm taking him as my last round dart throw. I got to do it.
I love it.
I'm hurting at the tight end position, but I can't. No, I'm not going to pretend like I like Dalton Schultz or Mike Gesicki. It's more of an exposure thing. But yeah, so something that I'm curious about, right? Because every year there's going to be, this is the guy I'm stuck on. This is the guy who I want. In your top placements in BBM in the last 3-4 years since you've won, has there been a constant in these lineups, one constant, a guy who you've gone to time in and time again, and he's paid off in all of these lineups, or just a random guy who's been in these lineups?
Not from a player standpoint, and probably a lot of that has to do with like when I'm drafting, player takes is like less important on my strategy aspects. And as I mentioned, like I'm never actually getting above 25%. So it's less of like, hey, there's a constant around a person. For me, it's more of a macro of figuring out what the actual draft kind of, I don't know, meta is for that year, and then figuring out how I can gain leverage on it.
So speaking of the draft meta on drafters, what's the meta? What do you think the meta is? Give us, man. You've won enough tournaments. You've gotten some high ass placements. Give us rookies a shot here.
Yeah, no, I'm not honestly sure. Like, it's only I could if you ask me like what the meta is on other sites, I feel like I'd know it more confidently. For drafters, it's weird to say, but it's almost just like people just take a draft the best plays strategy more than anywhere else. Because like stacks matter, sure. Bringbacks are irrelevant because every week matters. Like if you want to minorly optimize for like divisions, because you get a little value there, sure, whatever, but like that's not really. And so because like you just don't have nearly as much of the kind of micro strategy aspects, it kind of just turns into like you need to draft the best plays. I think where there's opportunity to kind of gain some leverage aspect is finding unique combination, getting unique in strategic ways. And so one example would be, let's say you draft Cooper Kupp, and I got him in the 5th. And I went fairly chalky with my build here today, but maybe I could have gone, instead of Cooper Kupp, I would have gone with T. Higgins. And T. Higgins is someone whose ADP is around like, more the 2-3 turn. And then with my 3rd pick, I would have grabbed another wide receiver that's around there. And now, instead of me going against, I don't know how many. Oh, I'm up right now. I think I just got my 3rd tight end. So let me have my 3rd tight end. Let's grab another. We have 2 more rounds. No, I don't want that. 9 seconds. Oh, Kieran Williams is already drafted. Wow. Okay. Let's go, Josh Kelly.
It's a good pick. I like Josh Kelly here.
Was Kieran Williams drafted? That's what I was looking for. Yeah, there he was.
He was drafted at 215.
Cool. Okay. So how many people are in this tournament right now?
So the drafters 2 million is just over 110,000 people.
110K, 30K right now. Let's say it gets up to 70K. 70K divided by 12 is 5,800. So 5,800 teams are going to have Cooper Kupp. How can I, in the years that Cooper Kupp ends up having like a huge season, how can I maybe get unique against those other 5,800 teams? And that's where I think there's some opportunities to kind of be a little creative with your strategy. And if you look like Cooper Kupp, majority of the teams that have Cooper Kupp are going to have also Jalen Waddle, Saquon Barkley, Chris Olave, Derrick Henry, whoever's like in that comeback middle range. And now, okay, so 6,000 Cooper Kupp's teams. I then combine him with a 2nd round pick that like maybe 15% of teams have. So now we go from 6,000 down to 900 teams have that same starting 2. That's still not that unique. But if I would have paired Cooper Kupp with T. Higgins, someone who's almost never getting paired with him in that 2nd pick, now instead of I having 900 teams, maybe I'm down to like 100 teams that have those.
Oh, did we just lose Justin to the Matrix? Oh, you're back. Sorry, you're back. Okay. I thought the Matrix got you.
Oh, sorry. So we're just finding ways to kind of find some unique combinations either early at the draft or at the very end. And so like that's why Kieran Williams is someone who I know hasn't been drafted much. I like drafting him. Josh Kelly, same thing. But I mean, like I know a lot of your Discords in here too, but I'm seeing like a lot of sharp picks in this 1920 of guys who often aren't being drafted.
Noted. Now, what's your take on Demario Douglas? Do you like him?
No, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna do. I mean, I don't know. I think he's. I mean, like I like him from a strategic aspect pick, where it's like,
Mhm.
hey, he's not being drafted at all. Preseason reports are kind of positive on him, so maybe he can, actually shine. But like, yeah, I think it's fine. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'd say.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm a Demario Douglas truther. I'm through and
what
through
I
very high
am
on
concerned is
him.
that Jelani Woods is not going to be drafted.
I know. I know. All right, guys, go ahead and spam hashtag Justin in the chat, and let's do this giveaway. Snowman089, he's won 3 out of 6 giveaways. So yeah, he's a pretty lucky guy. He says, guest question: did you ever get into any of the old MFL 10s? Used to do a few of those over the year and had no clue best ball would take off like it did.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that like literally best ball kind of started as just these 12-person leagues. They were called MFL 10s. They were $10 buy-ins. I think there were also like MFL 1s and MFL 100s too. I definitely did like a couple of them, but around that same time, I was heavily on the draft app, which was the precursor to Underdog from basically the same team. And so they had some, draft best ball style tournaments there too. A bit more kind of, app based, user friendly aspects. And I think like that's what really brought me into it. But hey, shout out to MFL 10s for being the OGs, and crazy to think how much we've grown from there.
Amazing. I generally have no idea what the hell MFL is. This is my first best ball like tournament ever, because it hasn't been available where I'm at, and the fact that it's available here. And if you're like myself, you can sign up using promo code DiscoDrafts1 and get up to $100 match with your initial deposit. I'm so sorry. I usually do like 1,000 shameless plugs there, but it's my fucking show, so I guess I could do a shameless plug. Corey Ruff says, not my favorite draft, but what's your critique of the team drafted from the 7 slot? Wish I'd have went Diggs in hindsight. All right, let's pull up the 7 slot. We won't critique all the drafts, but I will ask you about your draft, and I know that you have something that you'd like to discuss with us and show the folks after this.
Yeah,
correct?
we can chat through.
All right.
Okay.
So SM Army goes at the quarterback position. So his build is a 2-6-10-2. He goes Josh Allen, Jared Goff, running back J.K. Dobbins, Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Gainwell, Evan Hull. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Mike Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Jaden Reed, Devontae Parker, Darius Slayton, Michael Wilson, Chase Claypool, Deontay Hardy, Darren Waller, and he's a Laporta supporter. Hashtag Laporta supporter. We're big Laporta supporters here. So how do you feel about his lineup?
Yeah, I definitely don't mind it. I feel like you gave me Trent Sherfield when you should have grabbed some Trent Sherfield at the end there for that Boston unique aspect, but you went to Deontay Hardy, so I respect that as well. But yeah, I mean, all right, Waller and Laporta, I think like gives you some upside. I'm really big on Kenneth. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell seems like that kind of strong value right now. It's a bit of a 0 RB team. I think my only kind of my constructive criticism would be on a 0 RB team that I'm investing very heavily at wide receiver. Probably don't need to go as deep at the wide receiver position. I mean, Amon-Ra, Waddle, Williams, Ayuk is a very strong starting 4. That I think like those last couple, maybe Michael Wilson, Chase Claypool, like maybe that could have been another at least one more running back, or maybe one more kind of earlier on.
Fair enough. That's a good.
But I like it. I like it.
Personally, I think it's a great pick, but I don't think you're doing anything to stand out. In particular, taking Amon-Ra and Jalen Waddle at the 107, you could have gotten better value. But all in all, it's a good lineup. You clearly know what the hell you're doing. So I really like it. Take us through your team, Justin.
All right. So I was talking a lot and doing a stream, so I probably messed up a couple things here or there, but I was lucky to actually lean into some correlation. For me, I like getting just paths to upside at all my positions and drafters. So someone like Justin Fields with a steady kind of Matthew Stafford's a nice combination. from the running back position, Derrick Henry, and then I kind of just grabbed some decent falling value with Alexander Madison. A-Chain right now is just like, hey, this could have been a huge opportunity for him. I'm still a little kind of hesitant on it because I think I actually like Mostert a little more right now at that value. But I still think there's a lot of upside with these running backs. Wide receivers are led by Cooper Kupp. If you could scroll down, I've already forgotten who half my draft is.
My bad.
No worries.
Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, Bateman, Mooney, Jefferson. Nothing too sexy there, but I think I feel overall it's got some decent balance and upside. If you look at it, it's kind of like a combination between correlation and then just some falling value. And then my normal strategy. So, Mark Andrews also from an elite tight end standpoint, but still grabbing two other guys that I like at the position. I'm okay with the team. I think it's fine.
Noted. We got a question here from Ashen One. Sorry we didn't get this earlier. He says, how do you feel about Miami's backfield? The A-Chain.
Yeah, I like getting a lot of pieces of it. I think right now Mostert and Wilson are kind of just great values because I don't know, their ADP is reflected on the idea that they were going to potentially sign Dalvin or at least someone else. I don't think that's going to happen. And Mostert and Wilson have both been decent. If we knew that it was just going to be those three all year, they'd be moved up a lot more. I'm a little concerned with the current buzz out of camp around A-Chain from like the coaching staff. And I think it was Mostert even talking. It kind of sounded like, A-Chain might provide some burst or some splash as if like he's only going to play like a small amount. So that worries me a little, but I think all three of them are kind of ADP values at where they are right now with Dalvin signing elsewhere, with Mostert and Wilson being the best values.
Great response. Ash, if you have any other questions, buddy, feel free to throw it in the chat. And if I missed out on any of your questions or your chats, my bad, fellas. Forgive me. So we got a lot of people who entered the giveaway, including the folks at Drafters Fantasy. They put hashtag Justin with an LOL smiley face. Shout out to them. Jonesy Kenobi, or Basketball Jonesy now, he says, any good recommendations for sites to use while drafting to help with your lineup builds, correlations, etc.?
I'd go to My Fantasy Life. They have some tools that are completely free to use, and a great team behind that have been building. Actually, just today announced that they had a fundraising from the likes of Joe Burrow and I think LeBron and a couple others, but a lot of good people there and provided some really user-friendly tools for your best ball. Also though, you're talking about while drafting to help with the heads up displays. For those, I'd say you've got Spike Week from the Roto Grinders team. They have a heads up display. Brick, who I talked about earlier, he has a heads up display as well. I don't think My Fantasy Life has a heads up. They have good like in between drafts tools. The other two have good for if you're drafting on your computer and then want like a heads up display to show you that stuff at the same time.
Yeah, we had B. Kurt here show us the Spike Week tools. They were very cool, very, very unique. All right, so what do you have to show us, my friend? What do you have to show us? And
happy to. So we mentioned a little earlier kind of my day job right now. So I do a lot of stuff with ETR from a content and like and best ball stuff. But then also with OTM, the company that I co-founded a couple of years back, our vision is around like, hey, how do we continue to innovate and bring new fun fantasy sports things to this space? And one of those things, even earlier we were talking about kind of best ball and innovation aspects. And so one of those things that we've recently launched is like a new fun way to play best ball where it only takes like 3 minutes instead of doing like, hey, you have an hour to do a full draft. It's more pack based. You open a pack and we can open one right now. We can show it just to give a little feel. But these games, there's a free version. So if you go to my Twitter profile, my pinned tweet, we've got a free contest that you can get your pack and enter. Or we also have other games that are just you can like $10 to play and it's rake free. All the prizes go back out to the consumers as well. It's just kind of some fun games that we're continuing to kind of create and innovate on. But let me share my screen and we can get a feel. One thing that's pretty cool about this one is so this version, I don't know if you guys hear the sound.
Yeah, definitely hear the sound.
The beats are fun. But so for here, instead of it being individual players, you get teams and position groups. And as I mentioned, so instead of being like, hey, you draft and do that hour draft, here it's more of you open up a pack and then your team is based off what's in this pack. And in each pack, you get 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 defenses. And then the other 10 are completely random. And so from these 20 cards, in order to create your lineup, you actually build out a 12 card lineup that becomes your team for the year. And just like best ball, there's no management of it or anything. It ends up just taking your highest scoring at each position: QBs, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defense with 1 flex. And then throughout the year, there's a leaderboard. And you have the ability to kind of buy and sell these in the leaderboard too. So if you get off to like a hot start and you want to sell it to someone else or capitalize on that, you sell it. Or if you see a discount in the marketplace, you can go buy that. But a lot of people, we've really enjoyed it because like you don't have to worry about vultures. Like, okay, you don't know who's going to be the Buffalo running backs, whether it's Cook or Harris or Latavius. If any of them score, you get them all. So it really adds a fun like Cincy wide receivers. You're getting Higgins, you're getting Boyd, you're getting Jamar Chase. It's fun.
And this is available relatively everywhere.
Yeah, this is available everywhere. And like as we said, so like if you go to my Twitter account, in my pinned tweet, there's a link to enter a free contest where we're providing some prizes for it, but it's free to enter just to kind of give people a wet their beak. And then, as I mentioned, you can also kind of pay $10 to enter those contests, and then the $10 goes in, and all those prizes go directly back out to the people playing.
Well, sign me up. All right. Let's just look at who the winner is. Justin, I really want to thank you for coming by here and talking to us and spending the time with us. We've been a channel for like almost 3 months now, and it means a lot that somebody like you, who's established and well known in the industry, is humble enough and modest enough and has the humility to help everybody come up as well. So I'm really grateful for that. As for the winner for tonight, if you don't mind sticking around for 2 seconds. So the winner for tonight's giveaway is Hulk Smash. Hulk Smash, you are the winner. Congratulations, buddy. Make sure you contact me on Twitter at Big Draft HQ. And do you have anything to say to the folks before we close the show and say bye?
Disco, this is awesome. Appreciate you inviting me, bringing me on, and to all your Discord and your community out there. Appreciate the fun chat and questions and everything. And any other questions, honestly, as I said, I spend way too much time on Twitter. Feel free, shoot me a DM, shoot me a tweet, anything. Happy to kind of chat and answer any of the questions there. But best of luck to you, Disco. Best of luck to everyone watching, and appreciate it. Enjoy the evening.
Bye, guys.